Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. In this week's video we're going to be sharing our explore around the beautiful Hereford Cathedral. Reconstructed in a Romanesque style following the invasion of William the Conqueror in 1066, the cathedral was once an important national centre of learning and scholarship, yet also a magnet for immorality. Having already experienced a stormy history that continued following its Norman reinvention, the cathedral has been the site of both saintly and sinful deeds, including a terrible murder. So join us whilst we walk around here at the beautiful Hereford Cathedral. Despite its unsettled past though, the cathedral has remained a focal point for religious worship over the centuries, and is also home to an array of fascinating historical documents and artefacts. Of these, an 8th century illuminated gospel book, a relic of the murdered Archbishop St Thomas Becket, and Hereford Cathedral's 1217 copy of the Magna Carta, along with the King's Writ, are some of the things that you can see here. If you did watch our previous video on 48 hours in Hereford, you'll be able to see the two main draws to visiting the cathedral that are now housed in the modern extension at the southwest corner of the cloister, with its treasures of the Mappa Mundi, a medieval map of the world that dates from the 13th century, and the beautiful chained library. And if you haven't seen it, click the link in our description box below. Taking us back in time to the late 8th century, Ethelbert, the King of East Anglia, travelled to Mercia to ask for the hand of the daughter of the powerful Mercian king, Offa. Offa had young Ethelbert murdered. Tradition says that it was at Marden, which is around 5 miles away from Hereford, on the 20th of May, 794 AD. Ethelbert was then buried at Hereford, which had then been in existence for almost 200 years. His tomb is believed to have been sited to the east of the present high altar. Shortly after his death, miracles began to be reported at Ethelbert's shrine. Ethelbert was subsequently canonised, and pilgrims flocked to view his relics, including a tooth said to belong to him. One of the effects of this popularity was that Hereford Cathedral was rebuilt in a grand style. Despite the Norman rebuilding, much of earlier Saxon structure still remains, including sections of the crypt, chapel, nave and the south transept. As for Ethelbert, his relics were burnt or lost during a Welsh raid on Hereford in 1055. Whilst walking around, you'll notice some incredible details, relics and tombs in immaculate condition. Of that is the tomb of Sir Richard Pembridge. He was one of the earliest knights of the Garter, after being elected following the death of Thomas Ufford in 1368. He was present at all of Edward III's major victories during the 100 Years' War and fought alongside the Black Prince. In his will that he had made after being appointed a Garter Knight, he ordered that his body should be buried in Hereford Cathedral between 2 pillars of freestone, and his orders were listened to, and you'll be able to appreciate the knight in all of his glory. And just behind Sir Richard is another highlight for your visit, the international artwork that is dedicated to the Special Air Service and funded through donations by the SAS Regimental Association. This work is in the form of a magnificent sculpture and stained glass window, which was completed in April of 2017. You might spend your time just walking around and seeing the incredible artwork dotted around and the biblical scenes and tapestries that fill most of the walls surrounding the cathedral and underneath the very impressive traditional stained glass. The architecture here is beautiful, with influences of the Romanesque period. Something to look out for is the 12th century font that's located in the west end of the nave. You'll see that the bowl of the font rests on 4 figures of lions. It dates from around the mid-12th century and is decorated with figures of the 12 apostles around the bowl. the faces of which were defaced during the Reformation. Interestingly, the lion figures guard the base of the pedestal, and it's just incredible to be able to see the features up close. In our opinion, the next part of the cathedral is one that just has that wow factor. Walking down the nave towards the choir is such an experience when you're visiting. The nave is particularly light and airy, though the Romanesque columns on both sides give a sense of strength at odds with the spaciousness of later building. The nave was originally 1 bay longer, but in 1786 the west tower of the cathedral collapsed, causing great damage. It was architect James Wyatt that was called in to repair the damage. Wyatt was generally successful, but he did shorten the nave and completely remodelled the west front. When you gaze around the room, you can notice the arcade arches that are Norman, with scalloped capitals and extensive zigzags on the arches. All of these details truly light up the building, and you can understand why these places of worship give out such solitude and calmness when you're roaming inside. Just in front of us, you might notice one of the stunning features and beautiful photo opportunities here at the cathedral. This is what's known as the Corona, created in 1992 by Simon Beer. The suspended artwork of a thorny crown hangs above the tower crossing at the centre of the building and features a candle for each of the cathedral's deans. We make our way around to the south transept to marvel over the influencing gems of Romanesque times. The architecture here is just outstanding. This area of the cathedral was begun around 1107 and finished about 40 years later. The east wall is composed of 5 layers of arches, some of which are simply blind arcading. The walls are adorned with tapestries and carvings of faces. Within the south transept are a number of medieval brasses, where some are in excellent condition. The striking stained glass window depicts several local saints, including St Thomas of Hereford. Down the south choir aisle, you'll walk along the 12th century niche tombs that line each of the sides of the aisles, and you'll be able to marvel at a host of tombs that are filled with intricate carvings and relics that are so unusual to see nowadays. More carvings and tomb slabs line the floors and the sides of the cathedral, and I like that they use all of the space here. I found it fascinating to see this tomb in particular that had been scratched into. It's very odd if people have purposely ruined it, but it could have been middle-age graffiti or inscriptions. What we were quite amazed with were the old gurney stoves that heat the cathedral. They are quite timeless in design. I had read how they were first installed in the cathedral in 1867 and were coal-fired, but have since been converted to gas later in 1989. Perhaps the most finest and most photographed part of the cathedral is the Lady Chapel. This part of the cathedral is so elegant and impressive to see. It's one of the finest examples of early English architecture in existence, and it hides quietly and beautifully here. The carving and detail is superb. The chapel was added in 1217 to 1225, and it features some remarkable vaulting and multi-layered columns, which are still well preserved. It's here that in the 11th century the Lady Chapel was home to the cathedral's chained library, and some of the marks made by the bookcases can still be seen to this day. Nowadays, this 13th century chapel holds the shrine to the martyred St Ethelbert. The beautifully designed stained glass windows of the Lady Chapel are dedicated to the local poet and cleric Thomas Traherne, and are definitely worth taking a good look at. They are just mesmerising. Between the North Transept and the Lady Chapel is a lovely chantry sanctuary that was built for John Stanbury, the Bishop of Hereford, from 1453 until 1475. He was confessor to King Henry VI. The little chapel is known as the Stanbury Chapel. We happened to stumble upon this small, elaborate room, and well, the room just speaks for itself. The space is so tiny and intimate, but so peaceful too. The complex fan vaulting is crammed into every part of the ceiling, the style of which is in the perpendicular Gothic style. Bishop Stanbury's actual tomb stands just opposite his chapel. The highlight in this room is the illuminating stained glass that's designed by Arthur Davies. Moving on to the North Transept, you come across the most lavishly decorated shrine of Thomas de Cantilupe, the 45th Bishop of Hereford, who was declared a saint in 1320. Standing tall in stone and marble, this tomb is a great example of a well-preserved English medieval shrine. Many pilgrims visit to see this blue, gold and red decorated shrine, as well as the tapestries that depict the saints' journeys, which hang on the wall behind. Thomas de Cantilupe, known as St Thomas of Hereford, was noted for a series of lawsuits brought against the Archbishop of Canterbury and against local barons. After his death in 1282, miracles were reported at his tomb. And just like Ethelbert before him, Cantilupe was canonised and a shrine was erected in the North Transept. His shrine became so popular amongst his generation for its alleged healing properties that King Edward I also sent his falcons to the shrine to be healed. The top of Cantilupe's tomb has since gone, but the base still remains, where you'll be able to spot figures of the Knights Templar, for Cantilupe was Grand Master of the Order in England during his lifetime. Although Hereford is smaller than some other cathedrals, this was full of colour, mystery, intrigue and interest. In our opinion, this cathedral is a masterpiece of architecture and unexpected gems. It's just lovely to be able to visit for free, unlike lots of other cathedrals, and with the city centre just a moment's walk from here, it's a fantastic place to see if you enjoy medieval architecture and history. So that's it for this week, and we really hope that you've enjoyed visiting the cathedral with us. If you have, please be sure to hit that like button, click on the subscribe button to never miss another video, and consider supporting and joining us here on the channel, like our amazing Patreons and channel members. So we'll see you on the next one. Till next time.